I'm standing at the kitchen counter, coffee in one hand, the other smoothing down Emma's unruly curls as she frowns at the breakfast table. Come on, kiddo. Smile for me, I say gently. 7 years old and already carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken things. Mornings are a blur. Packing lunches, checking homework, making sure Lucas doesn't forget his homework folder again. It's a dance I've perfected. Get them dressed, fed, backpacks ready, shoes tied, and out the door to the bus stop by 7:15. No time to breathe. No time to be anything but their steady anchor in this storm. I call the school office to confirm the schedule for the new year, then herd my 2 little whirlwinds out front. The chill of early September bites at my cheeks, but I barely notice. I watch Emma wave goodbye, and Lucas, 10 but already carrying the tension of a boy too aware of grown-up fights, boards the bus. I linger, heart heavy, as a notification buzzes on my phone. I glance down. Mark's latest Instagram post. Him, smiling, standing beside the bus, a triumphant thumbs up captioned, "Dad duty's done right, off to win the day." My stomach twists. Everyone sees this version. The perfect dad involved and proud. No one sees the months without a child support check, the times he cancels visits last minute, or when his mother, Lily, sneers behind my back, saying I should have tried harder to keep their perfect family intact. Lily watches from the porch across the street, her eyes sharp, her lips tight with disapproval. She's never been subtle about it. I'm the woman who fractured their family, the one who couldn't hold it together, but I carry a secret weapon. My detailed records. Every payment missed, every call unanswered, every half-hearted promise logged and time-stamped. This year, something inside me shifts. I won't let their version of the story go unchallenged. For Emma and Lucas, I have to stand taller than ever before. This year, I fight, not just for survival, but for truth. 2 years ago, the house was filled with shouting, Mark's voice rising, slamming doors, the kind of chaos that seeps into your bones and makes you doubt everything. I remember standing there, exhausted from working double shifts just to cover rent and the kids' school expenses after Mark stopped paying his share. "If you'd just tried harder," Lily spat during one of her visits, eyes cold as winter. "This is your fault." I wanted to scream. I had stayed up countless nights helping Emma with her science project, patched up Lucas's scraped knees, and managed dinners with a smile even when my heart was breaking. Mark would promise to make it right, but the money never came. Instead, he'd post photos from weekend golf trips, designer bars, and dinners with friends. I kept telling myself, maybe if I worked harder, if I was more patient, this would all turn around. But deep down I knew. The cracks weren't mine to fix. Lily's blame was poison, infecting every moment I tried to breathe. And yet, I kept fighting. For them. Because if I stopped, who else would? I've given so much, more than anyone sees. $300 a month on after-school programs, school supplies that disappear into empty backpacks, medical copays I cover without complaint. When the old minivan broke down last winter, I drained my small savings to get it fixed, making sure Emma and Lucas could get to school safely. Mark's child support? $150 a month if it even arrives on time, often bouncing back like a cruel joke. Lily calls me irresponsible, says I'm always complaining, but it's her son who refuses to step up. In the midst of this, I met Sarah James, my closest friend, and now my legal advisor. Sarah's practical, no-nonsense advice is a lifeline. She's the one who told me to document everything, not just the payments, but every text, every missed promise, every hurtful word. So I did. I keep an exhaustive ledger, a detailed timeline of neglect wrapped in empty promises. Yet, I haven't used it yet. I want peace, not war. But I know I can't keep hoping forever. It happened at the school's fall festival, a day supposed to be full of laughter and pumpkin painting. Instead, Lily cornered me by the refreshment table, her voice loud enough for the nearby parents and teachers to hear. "You let your kids run wild and expect Mark to pick up the pieces," she sneered, eyes blazing with contempt. Mark stood nearby, that smug smirk on his face, saying nothing. Emma's gaze dropped to the ground, and Lucas tugged at my sleeve, confused and embarrassed. I felt the sting of their whispers, the judgment in the air. My heart slammed against my ribs, but I forced a calm smile. They don't know the whole story, I told myself quietly, swallowing the lump in my throat. The humiliation settled deep, but I refused to crumble. Still, a seed of doubt took root. Maybe I can't keep letting this happen. Not for my children's sake. Maybe it's time to stop hiding behind hope. They don't see my sacrifices, but I see everything. And now, I have to decide what I'm willing to fight for. After that festival confrontation, I thought the worst had passed, but Lily's next move was something darker, more insidious. Suddenly, whispers followed me down the school hallways, murmurs from other parents, subtle glances from teachers. One afternoon, as I picked Emma up, a mother I barely knew sidled up and murmured, "I'm sorry, but I've heard things about you. Financial trouble, right? And isn't it hard managing 2 kids alone?" The sting of those words cut deep, not because they were true, but because they made me invisible, reduced me to a rumor. The worst part, I knew where it came from. Lily's quiet campaign was underway. She had spun a web, painting me as unstable, an overwhelmed single mom who couldn't keep things together. At staff meetings, I noticed the subtle shifts, distant nods, curt conversations ending abruptly when I entered the room. The isolation was suffocating, as if I was walking through a fog of judgment and doubt. Meanwhile, Mark was relentless online, posting picture-perfect moments with his new wife, their smiling faces captioned with phrases like, "family first," and "living the dream." I scrolled past them, each image a fresh blow, a public performance that erased the months of missed payments and broken promises. The children were caught in the crossfire. Emma, who once happily told me about her school day, now hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting criticism. Lily's voice echoed in my mind, dripping with venom during our last tense phone call. "You're making things worse for your kids. Maybe if you weren't so emotional and dramatic, things would be different." Her words felt like a slap, but worse, like poison that seeped into my confidence. I sat at the kitchen table one night, ledger open, phone buzzing with texts from Sarah. "They're building a narrative," she warned. "You need to be ready." I felt the walls closing in, my support system fraying at the edges. Friends who once checked in had grown distant, unsure of what to believe. I was alone, yet I couldn't let that stop me. For Emma and Lucas, I had to be stronger than ever. But the truth was, I was exhausted. Every hour spent fighting, every moment second-guessing myself, was a weight I carried silently. Still, I refused to back down. If they wanted a war of whispers and shadows, I would meet it head-on. But first, I needed to try something different. I needed peace. Gathering my documents, I scheduled a mediation session, hoping to lay everything on the table, clear, calm, and rational. When Mark and Lily arrived, I could feel their disdain like a physical force. I started with the ledger, showing every payment, every missed visit, every broken promise. I spoke carefully, trying to keep the anger from my voice, hoping they'd see the truth. But Lily twisted every word, her tone dripping with false concern as she accused me of harassment and playing the victim. Mark sat back, arms crossed, shrugging as if he had no responsibility beyond his Instagram posts. "I do my part," he said, voice casual. "You just don't give me enough credit." The mediator struggled to keep the conversation on track, but Lily's interruptions and Mark's denials drowned out reason. I left that room feeling like a failure, the weight of their dismissiveness pressing down harder than ever. Instead of clarity, the session gave them more ammunition. Lily's version of events, me as the unstable, bitter ex, started to feel like the story everyone wanted to believe. At school, I caught sideways looks during recess, and parents who once smiled now offered polite but distant greetings. The children seemed to sense the tension, Emma's quiet bravery dimming, Lucas clutching my hand a little tighter each day. I sat on the porch that night, the ledger still on my lap, wondering how many more battles I had to fight before anyone saw the truth. Was there any way to fix this without losing myself? Then came the worst moment yet, a custody exchange that tore at my heart and pride in equal measure. Lily arrived, her smile cold as she pulled the kids toward her, her voice sharp as she demanded, Call me mommy, or no dinner tonight. Emma's eyes flashed with defiance as she stepped back and said, "You're not my mommy." The words hung heavy in the air, loud enough for the neighbors and babysitter to hear. I saw Lily's smile falter, replaced by a flicker of something darker. She stormed off, leaving me kneeling beside my daughter, holding her trembling hand. Lucas looked up at me, confusion and fear swirling in his eyes. I gathered them close, whispering that it was okay to stand up for themselves. But inside, my throat tightened with helplessness. Word spread quickly. The neighborhood buzzed, and the whispers grew louder. Now not just about me, but about the chaos we lived with. At school, the distance widened. I found myself paying for extra therapy sessions for the kids, trying to patch the cracks in their young hearts. The bills piled up, stretching my already thin finances to the breaking point. I gritted my teeth, telling myself this was just another storm to weather. But every cost, every whispered judgment, was a bitter reminder. I was fighting not just for custody, but for my children's souls. In a final act of hope, I reached out to Lily directly. I called her, voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "Please," I said, "the kids need stability. They can't be pushed to call you something they don't feel. It hurts them." There was a pause, heavy and cold. Then her reply came, sharp and unyielding. "They'll learn who's in charge. You lost your place the day you walked away." The words were a slap, a clear line drawn in the sand. My hope for cooperation, for peace, shattered in an instant. I hung up, heart pounding, tears blurring my vision. The fight ahead was no longer about negotiation. It was about survival. Lily and Mark weren't going to change. And if I wanted my children safe, I had to be ready to face them alone, fierce and unyielding. Because if not me, then who? Each morning felt heavier now, like I was wading through quicksand that pulled me deeper with every step. The whispers had grown louder, more insidious. At the grocery store, a mother I barely knew avoided my aisle, clutching her purse tighter as I passed. At school, parents who once exchanged polite nods now averted their eyes. The loneliness settled like a stone in my chest. No backup, no allies, just the cold weight of silent judgment. Lily's rumors had taken root, poisoning the well of community I once leaned on. Even some family members, once my pillars, had quietly distanced themselves, echoing her blame in hushed tones. It was like being trapped in a storm with no shelter. Inside my home, the cracks were showing on the faces of the two I fought hardest to protect. Emma, usually so full of questions and bright ideas, sat quietly at breakfast, her spoon pausing midair as if the act itself was a struggle. Lucas, once a chatterbox, had grown silent, his shoulders hunched in a way that made my heart ache. At night, they both woke from nightmares, trembling and calling for me. I stayed awake, listening to their ragged breathing, wondering if this was the legacy I was leaving them, a childhood shadowed by conflict and fear. The weight of it all pressed down until I doubted myself. Was I really the problem? Could I have tried harder? Those questions gnawed at me relentlessly. I stared at the ledger, my painstaking record of every missed payment and broken promise, and wondered if it was worth it. Sarah's voice over the phone was steady, a lifeline in the chaos. "Caroline, you have to take this to court. You have the evidence. You can't keep hoping for peace. It won't come." But the thought of dragging my children through more battles, more exposure, terrified me. What if it made things worse? What if the court saw me as the hysterical mother Lily painted me to be? Still, Sarah's words echoed in my mind as I held Emma's trembling hand one afternoon. "Mommy, why do they say I'm bad?" she whispered. The innocence in her question shattered something inside me. I wanted to shield them from the storm, but I was the one standing in the middle of it, alone, exhausted. And for the first time, I felt utterly broken. But even broken, I knew I couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Not when they needed me to be their fortress. I closed my eyes and breathed deep, trying to summon the strength that had carried me this far. The fight was far from over, but I was running out of options and time. The day I saw Lily berate Emma was the day something inside me snapped. I was waiting by the school gates, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows, when I spotted them. Lily, her voice low but cutting, her eyes cold as ice, and Emma, clutching my hand like a lifeline. "You're supposed to call me Mommy, Emma, not her," Lily hissed, her words sharp enough to cut through my heart. Emma's face crumpled in fear, but she stood firm, whispering, "You're not my mommy." That defiant little voice was both a beacon of bravery and a cry for help. Before I could gather my thoughts, the school counselor approached quietly, her eyes filled with concern. "Mrs. Perry, we need to talk," she said, pulling me aside. My heart pounded as she explained they'd noticed Emma's distress, her withdrawal, the sudden nightmares, and something else that made my blood run cold. "There's been a financial alert linked to Emma's name," she said softly. "It seems Mark has been using her identity for credit fraud." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My daughter's innocence, weaponized by the man who was supposed to protect her. The counselor and a teacher stood nearby, watching the exchange, their faces etched with sympathy and shock. I felt the old restraint that had kept me silent crumble into dust. The betrayal was staggering, a cold betrayal layered on top of years of neglect and lies. In that moment, the exhaustion, the doubts, the isolation, they all melted away, replaced by a fierce, burning resolve. I vowed then and there that this nightmare would end. Not just for me, but for Emma and Lucas. I would fight with every ounce of strength in me. No more silence. No more turning the other cheek. This was war, and I was ready to stand my ground. Later, alone in the quiet of my bedroom, I let the flood of emotions crash over me. Years of sacrifice, endless nights spent patching wounds, both physical and emotional, and the relentless blame weighed down on my spirit. But beneath the sorrow was something new, a raw, searing anger, the kind that rises from pain and refuses to be silenced. The credit fraud was undeniable proof of Mark's recklessness, his disregard not just for me, but for our children's futures. And Lily's venomous blame had been a shield for their cruelty all along. I traced the lines of my hands, worn from years of work and worry, and whispered to the empty room, "Never again." The words felt like a promise, a vow to myself and my children that I would not be broken or erased. I saw clearly now the pattern. Mark and Lily using my love, my responsibility, and my endurance as weapons against me. But this time, I would not be their victim. The doubts that once clouded my mind dissolved into clarity. I was no longer just a survivor, I was a warrior, and I would fight until the last breath in me. The next morning, I called Sarah James, my voice steady but charged with new purpose. "Sarah, it's worse than I thought. Mark's fraud against Emma. It's the last straw. I want full custody. I'm done with just surviving." On the other end, Sarah's tone was firm, almost triumphant. "Caroline, this is your custody checkmate. We've got the leverage we need. Now it's time to gather every piece of evidence. Payments, missed visits, emotional harm. We'll build a case they can't ignore." For the first time in months, I felt a surge of hope, like a fire rekindling in my chest. The path ahead would be long and brutal, but I was ready. No more crumbs of respect or cooperation. I wasn't just fighting for my rights. I was fighting for my children's safety and future. The solitary nights, the isolation, the self-doubt, they had forged me into something stronger. With Sarah's support and my resolve, I would prepare for battle. Because if I didn't fight, who would? And if not now, when? I sat at the kitchen table, the late afternoon sun slanting through the blinds, casting long shadows over the piles of documents spread out before me. Bank statements, school reports, therapy notes, all meticulously organized. Each page a silent testament to years of juggling everything without a net. It was exhausting, but also necessary. I had to see clearly where Mark and Lily's weaknesses lay, to understand just how much they depended on me, even as they tried to convince the world otherwise. Mark's child support was a joke, $150 a month on paper, but the truth was worse. Sarah had helped me comb through the records, and together we found over $3,200 in missed payments over the past year alone. Every cent I'd had to make up for, every late bill, every school supply. I felt the familiar sting of rage simmering beneath the fatigue. Lily's grip on her social standing was fragile, built on the illusion of a perfect family that didn't exist. She masked her fear of exposure with blame, but I knew her well enough to see the cracks. Her venomous words at every turn were desperate attempts to hold on to control. I pulled out Emma's school reports, notes from teachers and counselors detailing her withdrawal, the nightmares, the sudden drop in enthusiasm. Emma was hurting, and the blame Lily cast at me was a poison that seeped into my children's hearts. But here, in these pages, was proof, evidence not just of neglect, but of active harm. Sarah had explained it carefully over the phone. The emotional damage, combined with the financial manipulation, was enough to push for a custody modification. Suddenly, the power in my hands felt real. I wasn't just fighting shadows. I held undeniable proof that could shatter their control. I closed the ledger and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle like armor around me. This wasn't just about money or custody. It was about protecting Emma and Lucas from the damage that had already been done and stopping it from getting worse. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of clarity cut through the fog of exhaustion. I wasn't alone in this fight. I had the truth, and that truth was a weapon they couldn't deny. Maintaining calm had never felt so crucial. I moved quietly through my days, playing the part of the composed teacher and nurturing mother, while behind closed doors, I prepared for war. I organized every scrap of evidence, bank statements lined up like soldiers, school records stacked with precision, therapy notes cataloged by date. I even saved screenshots of Mark's social media, where he flaunted luxury vacations and new gadgets, all while claiming poverty to avoid paying his fair share. The hypocrisy was sickening, but I filed it away, knowing it would speak volumes in court. I met with Sarah again, hammering out statements and preparing affidavits. Every word was chosen with care, like assembling a puzzle that would expose their lies. At home, I made sure Emma and Lucas felt safe, even as the storm gathered. I tucked them into bed each night with soft reassurances, hiding my own fears behind a mask of warmth. I shielded them from the legal battles, the whispered arguments, the cold stares from neighbors. The school was notified, not just about Emma's emotional distress, but also about the financial inconsistencies. I requested an official investigation, knowing that turning a blind eye was no longer an option. Every call, every email was a thread, woven into a web of accountability. I was preparing for the worst, but hoping for a breakthrough. The silence before the storm was deafening, but it was deliberate. I was ready. Then the call came, shattering the fragile calm I'd maintained. The school's principal's voice was low, urgent. "Ms. Perry, we've uncovered something serious. It appears Mark has been using Emma's identity to open multiple credit accounts without your knowledge." My breath caught. Detailed documents followed. Statements, application forms, letters from creditors. The betrayal was staggering. My daughter's innocence weaponized. Her name dragged into a reckless game of fraud. The shock hit hard, but beneath it was a fierce clarity. This was no longer just a custody dispute. This was danger. Financial harm layered on top of emotional abuse. The game had changed, and now I held the ace. Fueled by a surge of urgency, I contacted Sarah immediately. We filed emergency motions, citing not just neglect, but active harm to the children's financial and emotional well-being. The stakes had skyrocketed. This was a protective intervention, a chance to finally strip Mark and Lily of their manipulative hold. I felt the fire inside me burn hotter, the exhaustion replaced by fierce determination. This was about more than custody now. It was about justice, safety, and reclaiming our lives. The path ahead was daunting, but I was ready to walk it head-on. The first moves were deliberate and precise. I suspended Mark's visitation temporarily, citing the risk his actions posed to Emma and Lucas. Credit agencies were alerted, and Child Protective Services notified. Mark's reaction was one of stunned confusion. He didn't realize his fraud had been uncovered. Lily went into damage control mode, posting dismissive comments online, calling me hysterical and vindictive. I blocked both of them from all communication channels, refusing to engage with their toxic manipulation. Their carefully maintained facade began to crack, their lies unraveling under the weight of truth. Emma and Lucas started therapy sessions to help process the emotional damage, the nightmares, the anxiety, the confusion. Watching them in those sessions, I felt a mix of heartbreak and pride. They were brave, even when this was so hard. Their strength pushed me forward, reminding me why I fought so fiercely. This was just the beginning, but already I saw the first cracks in the enemy's armor. The battle lines were drawn, and I was no longer hiding in the shadows. I was a warrior, standing tall for my children's future. The courtroom was cold, sterile, yet today, it pulsed with the quiet storm I had been building for months. I sat upright, clutching my folder tightly, every page a testament to years of exhaustion, loneliness, and relentless fighting. Mark and Lily sat across the room, their faces pale, eyes darting as Sarah and I laid out the evidence like a well-forged blade. Bank statements documented missed child support, therapy reports detailed Emma's nightmares and Lucas's withdrawal, school records showed the toll on their attendance and grades, and most damning of all, the credit fraud investigation dossier, proving Mark's reckless betrayal of his own daughter's identity. I spoke clearly, my voice steady despite the weight in my chest. "This isn't about blame," I told the judge. "It's about protecting my children's safety and well-being." The room seemed to hold its breath as I watched Lily's defensive glare sharpen and Mark's mouth open, then close in stunned silence. The judge's nod was slow but firm, a clear signal that the tides were turning. For the first time in a long while, I felt the heavy armor of exhaustion slip away, replaced by a fierce, quiet triumph. This was my moment, the culmination of every sleepless night and every whisper of doubt. I was no longer the woman they dismissed. I was the mother who refused to be broken. In the days that followed, the world I knew began to shift beneath their feet. Mark's employer was alerted to the credit fraud. His carefully constructed image of success and responsibility shattered as investigations spiraled. Lily, once the queen of our community's social circle, found herself ostracized. Her venomous grip loosened as rumors of her involvement surfaced. Their reactions were frantic. Mark's texts flooded my phone, begging for forgiveness, promising change, but I said nothing. Only Sarah answered on my behalf, firm and unyielding. Lily's false apologies appeared online, crafted to manipulate sympathy, but the cracks in their facade were too wide. I watched from a distance, guarded but resolute, as their control slipped like sand through desperate fingers. The chains of lies they wrapped around my children and me were breaking, and with every failed attempt to win me back, I felt the weight of isolation lift. I was no longer alone in this fight. The truth was my shield, and it was unassailable. Their desperation grew, twisting into sharper weapons as Lily rallied old allies, mutual acquaintances, distant family, pressuring me to drop the case. Threats of countersuits loomed over my head like dark clouds, while Mark threatened to cut visitations further and withhold the little support he grudgingly provided. Yet, every attempt at manipulation bounced off the fortress I had built around myself. Sarah and I documented every message, every call, every veiled threat with meticulous care. I maintained rigid boundaries, refusing to engage with their drama or fall into their traps. The loneliness of doing this alone was real, but so was my resolve. I was a mother protecting her children, a warrior unbroken by the storms of deceit. Watching them isolate themselves with each failed ploy was bittersweet. Their desperation confirmed that I had been right all along. They were the ones losing ground, exposed and powerless against the truth I held like a sword. When the court finally ruled, the relief that flooded me was overwhelming. Full custody was granted, not just because of missed payments or broken promises, but because the court acknowledged the emotional harm Mark and Lily had inflicted on Emma and Lucas. The judge's words echoed in my ears as I held my children close for the first time in a long time without fear. Sarah's quiet smile beside me was a balm after the years of struggle. At home, the air shifted gently. The children's laughter started to return, tentative but real. I set clear boundaries. No unsupervised contact with Lily, strict visitation terms for Mark, and enforced child support payments. As I walked Emma and Lucas to school under the soft morning sun, the weight I had carried for so long felt lighter, replaced with hard-won peace. I fought not just for custody, but for their safety and dignity, and now, finally, we could breathe. The road ahead would still have challenges, but this was our new beginning, a future shaped by resilience, love, and the fierce strength of a mother who would never back down.